All right, everyone. I've got none other than Wayne Patton. Wayne's been my asset protection attorney and close friend since what, 2015, 16, somewhere in there, maybe even 14.
Something like that.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So I met Wayne. I went to a real estate investment seminar, and generally these seminars is not where you want to pick up your attorney from. A lot of these seminars you go to, they're sponsored by someone, and the person who's bringing on the asset protection or whatever makes a big rip off bringing that person on. But luckily, this was a local investing club, and I just felt a connection with Wayne. We connected after, and just a great soul, knew the space, and it just happened. Just everything worked out, and then we became very great friends. Part of this episode, we're going to have some fun. Wayne and I developed a great relationship over the years, working together on various different things. He's done our asset protections, done our estate planning, and part of watching this episode is you have to watch the other guys, because there'll be some inside jokes. The other guys is required watching for this episode. So again, Wayne's a stud. He's the guy I go to for tax advice, legal advice, and overall like financial planning and asset protection, as well as investment advice. One of the things you want to achieve with all your advisors over time, and it takes time to develop this relationships, is I bank on Wayne 100%. Meaning, if anyone ever asks me for an attorney referral, like there's nobody else. Like, it's Wayne. Not only is he growing, he's a professional, he's also a great friend and a great soul. And he's also, more importantly, a team player. He knows how to play well with the team. And part of playing well with the team is I give to the team, right? I share my contacts and my resources with Wayne, but vice versa too. If I need something, hey, Wayne, do you know anybody over here? Do you know anybody over here? Do you have someone that does this? So that's ultimately where you want to get to over time, guys, with your entire team. You want them all to do that. And then what's nice is we're at a place right now where my CPA is kicking people to Wayne and Wayne is kicking people to him. And now when your team starts, you have a great team when your team starts to send people to each other, because they're like, all right, this is a great team. Like, why would I go anywhere else? This makes my life easy. So Wayne, any thoughts on what I said there?
It hits the nail right on the head. You want everyone to be, you want the professionals that you work with to interface with each other seamlessly, right? There's lots of situations where you see professionals working with each other and it feels like one is stepping on the other one's toes. We're going to dig into some offshore asset protection type of questions, but one huge issue with offshore asset protection is, financial advisors don't really want to refer business, even though a client might need asset protection, because they lose the assets under management if it goes offshore, right? And I've developed relationships with financial advisors where they don't have to lose that business, right? They can continue working with the client that they've developed the relationship with, and the client likes working with their financial advisor. So it's actually a cost to have to say, hey, you've got to sacrifice this relationship. So it doesn't have to happen. You just have to have people that are willing to kind of go the extra mile and to massage the situation to figure out how it can happen, Yeah. And also, Ray, let me just make sure one thing was clear that you said to everyone. Yeah, you have to watch the other guys. And Ray wasn't just talking about his other two interviews they did with Edwin Kelly and Bryce. He's talking about the movie, The Other
Guys.
Yeah,
classic. You gotta watch that.
Yeah, because it's like you've said it a million times, Ray. It's the most quotable movie that so few people have seen.
And it's hilarious.
Ray and I get through lots of conversations in just other guys' ease, right? Like just speaking.
and it makes it fun. I mean, one of the things you pointed out is find out what the incentive structure is. So for example, with Bryce, I love their model because they don't get paid AUM. They get paid a flat fee, which is perfect, right? Because now there's no vested interest. Like, he can refer Wayne because they're not managing assets under management. They're making advice, and that's perfect. So you can find someone that works kind of hand in hand. And the other thing you said that I wrote down is, when you look at asset protection, one of the things that first started with me is you've got to look at asset protection, and Wayne, give me your high level insight on this, is, am I investing in an asset or is it a cost? If you look at it as a cost, then it's going to change the way you look at it. For me, this was always an investment in my baseline of my life. So when I first started asset protection, it was almost like buying insurance, and it's not sexy and most people avoid it, et cetera, but it was always an investment. And when we started with Wayne, the investment was a substantial part of our net worth at that time, because at that time we didn't have the assets we have now. So, but I also knew we were going to grow into them. So that's something, and it depends on your risk tolerance, whatever you want. But what I really want to share with you guys is my mindset personally here is that asset protection, estate planning is always an investment, not a cost. What are your thoughts, Wayne?
I agree completely. My favorite phone call to get is from a couple that is, or a young professional. But I'm just thinking, in my mind right now of one specific couple who called me. I think a husband was 28, wife was 26. They've got like $400,000, right? And they've had some success in operating a business, and now they're also starting to have some success in renovating some houses, but they're doing it themselves. They're having fun with it. They're having a ball with it, and they're making some money. And they go, wow, we really see how we have a vision, right? We have a sort of glimpse of the future, and we know that we're going to be really successful, and we want to build that inside of a protected structure. We want that success to occur in such a way so that it's protected, and it can provide for us in the future. It can provide for our family in the future, right? That's my favorite kind of call to get, because that person comes from a mindset of I want to create the strong foundation. The video and the interview that you did with Bryce was great, because Bryce kept coming back to over and over again. And again, this is testament to the fact that, you pay him a monthly fee. He's not, his incentive is to provide you with the best kind of advice and perspective that he possibly can, because no matter what, he's going to earn that money. He wants to earn it by doing right for you.
Sure.
And he kept coming back to, my baseline is asset protection. My baseline is asset protection. Make sure you're protected first, and then let's figure out how to grow, how
100%.
to allocate, what additional risks that we can take. So I really like that. I really like that perspective, right? And it's something that you can, that if you build into your mindset as to how you operate your business or how you invest, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time on it, other than making that initial commitment and the initial investment, and then it's just sort of maintenance, but it's always there for you. And like you said, it's like insurance, but it's different than insurance, because you need to make an insurance claim. You run the risk of your insurance company being in opposition to you at that point in time, right? I mean, they're looking for a reason to not cover you. They're looking for a reason to find an exception to why they should pay this. So your asset protection plan is never going to do that. And I want to also sort of define what an asset protection plan is, because I don't look at it as just
before you get there. Let me
say
something in there, but we're going to get into that. One of the things I wanted to mention, that we mentioned on the first call with Bryce too, and Wayne said it, but I just really want to make it clear for a lot of entrepreneurs. That's who we're talking to, a lot of real estate guys. What Wayne said about taking the baseline took me a while to get to. So what he really means is, let's say your baseline for your base life is here, right? And your goal is never to go back to that job at GE for me, or whatever that is. Asset protection, as soon as you hit that next level of bump of income or wealth or whatever it is, you want to raise that baseline up so you never go back there. And one of the guys that put it eloquently to me was Tito Beverage from Tito's Vodka.
Okay.
Whenever he got a big win, he'd raise the baseline. He goes, I'd never want to go back there. And that was his biggest win. So he'd risk the rest, but he made sure that his level up in the life was never to go back to where he used to be. So that's that's one of the benefits that asset protection provides for you, is you don't want to go back there.
That's exactly right. You basically raise the floor, right? So as you have increased success, you can say, all right. I mean, the purest form of asset protection asset protection comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, right? I mean, you have insurance, you have life insurance, but you also have liability insurance. You have your IRA and your retirement plans. You have your homestead in Florida, right? There's lots of different ways to protect assets. I mean, in Florida, if you have an annuity.
Well, I love that you just said the basic ones. Like, these are the ones that, guys, these are the low hanging, the ones what Wayne just mentioned. He just kind of said it off the cuff of his head. These are the no-brainers that you should already have those in place before you see a guy like Wayne. Because like these are the gimmies. Would you agree with that? Or?
Absolutely. You and I have had the conversation, right? That you get the right life insurance policy, and you can look at it as like a high yield savings account that actually has a cash value and is actually protected from your creditors, right? So that just goes to the baseline, right? Like, I don't want to go below this baseline. So as I grow, I'm going to kick more into that. I'm not an insurance salesman. I get nothing when clients buy insurance, but yet I recommend it all the time, because I think insurance is relatively inexpensive for what you get, and in terms of ramping, in terms of ramping yourself up and constantly ratcheting, your life to a higher floor, as you were talking about.
All right, so let's talk. I guess what is asset protection to you? I guess we start there. You were going to kind of mention that to our viewers.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just touched on what I was going to say, and that is it's really anything that you can do that buys you peace of mind,
Okay.
right? So you you have a Florida homestead and you have a lot of equity in it. Okay, nobody can take that away from you. You've got a place to live as long as you can, pay the property taxes on it, right? And a hurricane doesn't blow it away, and you've got adequate insurance on it, right? So again, you've got to protect what the asset itself is. In terms of legal asset protection planning, it comes in a lot of different varieties. So my background right out of law school, I worked for a huge law firm, did corporate and securities work and mergers and acquisitions, for Fortune 500 companies, and it's based on the premise of asset protection, right? All of these transactions are structured in such a way so that the company's interest is protected, right? Individual asset protection is no different. You just need to really make sure that you're covering the bases. And so you can use, domestic companies, you can use domestic trusts, you can use offshore companies, and you can use offshore trusts. And there's sort of a time and a place for all of that. And I don't want to go backwards here, but I do need to say, just so everyone's clear, I'm not giving any legal advice here to anybody. If anyone needs or is desirous of legal advice, you need to speak to an attorney. Ray and I are talking in general terms here for educational purposes. So I don't want anyone to take anything that I say as as gospel and go rely on it and it not turn out the way that you hoped or wanted it to. So you do need to seek qualified legal representation. And the same goes for, if we talk about investments or anything like that. Yep. I'm not even an investment advisor of any kind.
Neither am I. It's just purely education.
One of the blessings in my practice is that I have people who invest in and operate businesses and come from all different walks of life. The biggest blessing of my business is people let me into their lives, sure. Right? And I can develop trusting relationships, and I get to learn things that I never thought I would get to learn about, right? So what that does is it kind of broadens the horizon, right? You start seeing things, different aspects of things that you never noticed before. Different scripts that people run. I mean, people have different things that they tell themselves or different, different sort of mantras that they live by that you can actually see how it manifests itself in the person's life, right? It's the habits they've developed. It's whatever, it's how they respond to certain situations. And you kind of, if you zoom out, right, you kind of could say, wow, if I met this person and I knew all these things about him, you can kind of predict where it's going to actually lead you to,
100%.
Right? So I have clients that they don't want to do too much asset protection because part of their business and part of their life is having complete control of everything in a way where they don't want to tie it up in such a way that it would be more protected for them. But these people have also segregated risk for themselves, right? So they go, yeah, look, if I were to lose everything, which I've already lost everything 2 or 3 times before, and I know that I can make it back, and that's just part of the game. And yeah, do I want a nest egg, right? I mean, listen, the purest form of asset protection in my book is, you have some cash, you're willing to let the cash grow either in the market or in some form of passive investment that you don't control. And you can put that in a Swiss bank account that's owned by an offshore trust. And that's it. That's your starter kit if everything else goes kaput.
Like your comeback fund. We talked about that, right?
That's it. That's exactly what it is. So it's something you're willing to say, okay, I'm just not even going to think about this. Yeah. But there are guys that say, no, every penny, guys and men and women who say, no, every penny that I have has to be working for me at all times. Okay, well, you just have to understand what the risk to that is, right? I like what Jerry Seinfeld says about it. He's like, nah, I don't want my money working for me. I want my money well rested when I need it, right? So he's carved some out, right?
I think Einstein said it well, like, is the world a safe place, safe and loving place, or is the world a fearful place? And depending on your perspective, it'll shape your reality, right? Wayne and I are both into meditation, into spiritual side. It's really, you create your own reality by the way you think it. There is no reality. You create it every single day by the thoughts you think or sure. Don't think, right? So, and the other thing I heard you say in there that was really interesting, I hadn't kind of come to that conclusion before. I don't think your thoughts on it, that asset protection is very much like a custom tailored suit. It's custom tailored to you, to your individual circumstances. This isn't like so what Wayne and I are going to talk about now, we'll get into a little more of the meat potatoes now, isn't one size fit all. If it was, Wayne's life would be a lot easier. It depends on your risk tolerance, on what you're doing, on what you want to protect, on how many layers of administration that you're going to go through. Would you agree that this is a very custom tailored thing?
What types of assets you have?
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's a huge component to this, because if you are running an operating business, so I have a lot of attorneys as clients, right? And if attorney is running their business, or a physician is running their business in an S corporation, that type of entity can't be protected with an offshore structure, right?
Oh, wow.
So you've got to come up with a mix that makes sense. So is it okay, as this generates cash, I pay myself, larger wages in terms of W-2, and I take more distributions, and I make sure the business is not undercapitalized because I have adequate insurance, and I do keep some reserves in place. But quarterly or twice a year, I'm going to take some money off the table and set it aside and say, okay, that's going to be protected. But the business itself can't be protected that way. You can do other things. You can bring in another partner, another member if you have an LLC that's taxed as an S corporation, and now you get some charging order protection.
You can get some debt on it. You could do some equity stripping.
Yeah, there's lots of different things that you can do, but it's going to depend on the type of business that you have, right?
Well, even there, like for example, when you just said that comment, what came up for me was like, hold on, CPA, bring him in, because if we're going to do payroll, then we got to pay self-employment tax. What are the tax consequences of that? Can we get it out through a distribution instead? This is not a one. Initially, this takes time and a team to set up, because there's a lot of complex. This is just one simple example. Wayne came up and it just got complicated.
It got very complicated, right? I mean, if you don't do it on the front end, so here's something for most of the folks that follow you and are probably watching this are real estate investors, right? You don't want real estate to appreciate in an S corporation by and large, right? Again, I'm not giving you advice, so talk to your CPA about it, but I can't tell you how many people come to me and they have appreciated real estate that's in an S corporation. And now it's really hard to get it out because you have to mark to market and pay taxes, and you don't even have a realized gain. You don't have the liquidity to do that, maybe.
Sure.
So you kind of want to front load the planning. And the other thing that I think, I heard you talking about it in some of the other videos that you've done, and I think a whole lot of people learned it last year. No matter what the circumstances are, pay yourself something and eat the 15.3% FICO, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
If you hadn't done that in 2020, forget getting any of the PPP money or the free money that was basically
you couldn't get it.
It was handed out to you, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, hey, if you've been paying this 15.3%, we're going to give you this. Now, I don't think this is going to happen again, where it's going to be that way, but that's what determines. Look, down the road, you want to get a mortgage, buy a house. You want to, you're not just going to be able to say, oh, I take distributions from this, right? I mean, lenders want to see that you have an income that's ordinary income, right? So to some extent, you've got to find the mix that makes sense for you on that, right?
Even asset protection, audit proofing is asset protection, in my opinion. Well, dude, if you have an S corp and you're not paying yourself a salary and the S corp is profitable, man, I'd hate to be the CPA representing that guy in front of the IRS. You know what I mean?
Well,
you're
the
just like a schmuck.
Yeah, I mean, the IRS requires that you pay yourself a reasonable salary for a person in that position.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So why take the risk that you're going to get slapped down on that, right? Or the future consequences. Sometimes when I try to help clients think about their risks, there's a spectrum of risks that you have to consider. There's some risks that are very, very unlikely to result in a liability, right? But if they do, the liability is huge.
Massive.
Right. And then there's things that very, very likely to result in a liability. But maybe the consequences aren't so harsh. So I'll give you an example. I have one client has a lot of liquidity, and he has some real estate, and there's mortgages on the real estate, and he wants to transfer them into an entity because he's owns the real estate in his personal name and has realized, okay, that's a risk that I don't want to take. Okay, well, now there's a new risk that your mortgage lender triggers your due on sale clause, right? You transferred it. So you either have to ask for permission and hope they give it to you, which I can tell you in most cases, unless you have a really great relationship with your lender, is a nightmare. They're just going to flat out say no. Or you have to ask for forgiveness. And that is just do it, keep making your payments, hope they don't notice, and hope they don't accelerate. But you're technically in breach of this contract, right? Because you've made a covenant that you're not going to deed this property. Well, in this guy's particular case, he's like, well, I think the risk of that happening, of them noticing, is small because I'm going to keep making all of the payments. If they do notice, right, then the consequence is small also, because I've got the cash to just pay off the mortgages. So I'm not in a fix where I've got to go find someone who's going to lend to this brand new entity that I created and transferred this property to, breaching these covenants. So, but to somebody else, that might be a big deal, right? I mean, if you got your loan 10 years ago and your credit score's tanked since then, and now you want to transfer the property and you don't have the cash to pay off the mortgage, if it's accelerated, you're in a different boat.
Sure. Right?
You probably can't get refinanced, and you could land in foreclosure because of it, right? So you've got to just kind of understand what your risks are.
It's risk reward. If we're talking about asset protection as an investment, well, then how do you measure investments? Risk reward, and that's very individualized, very idiosyncratic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a huge risk that people have: your employees. If you're running a business, right, and if you're running a business and you don't have employees, and everybody is a general contractor, but they show up to the same place, they're
undercover employees. Yeah.
Right. So let one of those employees slap a lawsuit on you and say that, oh, by the way, you haven't been withholding the employer's share of FICA. You haven't been providing me with the things that you have to provide to an employee. I have one client who. Oh,
and by the way, I'm going to go to the Florida Department of Revenue to tell them that you
have been paying your reemployment.
Yeah.
Taxes,
oh, dude,
right?
I've been there. Luckily, I was actually hired a contractor, and they were trying to get unemployment, and it was clearly a contractor. And I still ended up paying them money because they had to find, once they get started, they got to find something.
Right. It's like I have clients that go into mediation, right? And they go, oh man, my case here is so strong. There's no way I don't completely prevail. And I always have the same response to that, which is, no, you're going into mediation. They can't give it all to one side. They just can't, right? I mean, that's not how. Nobody walks out of a mediation like that. I mean, there's a theory that successful negotiation is when either both parties walk out of there happy or both parties walk out of there dissatisfied. But either way, it's successful. I mean, they're probably gonna give something. They're find something, right? Something to come down on you about. So it's another thing that you need to be careful about. But that's a risk, right? I mean, so you want something that's asset protection. Put an employee handbook in place.
Something as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. And if the deterrent is, well, then I got to run payroll. I can't just write a check to this person and give them a 1099 at the end of the year. You know how easy it is now to run payroll. I mean, there are services you push a button and it's done.
QuickBooks will do it now. Yeah.
QuickBooks will do it. You can do it through Square. You could do it through I think it's called Sure Payroll, ADP, Paychecks. I mean, and it's online. It's an interface. They figure it out for you. They do all the tax filings.
Done.
It's a form of asset protection, right? And put an employee handbook in place, right? That
says a simple bookkeeper, a legit bookkeeper, like a CPA level bookkeeper, not the guy you pay $10 an hour to that comes, a CPA level bookkeeper for, we'll have them on our show here. Dude, someone like that could just help you tremendously through this basic stuff, making sure your 941s are filed, your RT6s, like these are just basic layups that a lot of businesses are uncovering.
And talk to an employment attorney about an arbitration provision, right? So if anybody has a dispute, the United States Supreme Court has said that an arbitration provision is enforceable. Well, you're more likely to get a fair shake and not have something really frivolous come against you if you're going to be in front of an arbitration panel that actually has experience in this, they have some expertise or some experience in this particular area of law, right? So the opportunity to shake you down is mitigated somewhat. And these are all forms of asset protection, right? It's not what I do, I advise clients, hey, make sure you've done this, right? Make sure you've got all this stuff squared away.
And it sounds like, Wayne, from my gut, my heart's telling me that 80-90% of the basics are these right here. So what Wayne and I will get into is that other 10% out of the blue, higher level stuff. But if this stuff's not resolved, like an audit from the state or an audit from the IRS will have you not lose sleep and lose money and not make money on the opportunity cost of that time that you could be doing something else. Plus, you got to pay now a CPA to look at all that stuff and fight them for something simple that you just missed that has nothing to do with asset protection. Like asset protection isn't going to help you from an IRS audit because you didn't pay yourself a payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the cost on the front end, and I get it. If someone's just starting up and they're really truly on a shoestring budget, right? It can seem daunting, and there's a lot of compliance. And are we ever going to get to providing the service or the value, that we envision for our company? Because we've got to do all these little things, but just front loading it and doing it all right from the beginning is going to mean you don't have to lose sleep. And everyone's going to make mistakes.
Sure.
Right. No one's going to get it perfect.
And you layer into this, guys. For the first few years, we didn't pay ourselves a salary, but I could defend that because we were losing money every single year. And then, but as soon as you're profitable, so like what you want to do is find out where the holes are, the easy pickups, and then fill those. And then year two, fill those, like continue to grow this piece over time. Right.
Sure. Exactly right.
And then you have this unique way of looking at asset protection that I liked when I first met you. You have like a framework where you're just like, look, I can give you this, this, or this, but it's hard for me to give you all three of these. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? I like that framework.
Yeah, so I still think it works as a general sort of way of thinking about it, and that is you can have control, beneficial ownership of assets. You can have protection for those assets, or you can take certain actions that give you tax benefits, and you can really pretty easily get 2 out of 3. But when you start, when I get into the world where people are saying you can get all 3 of these things for like all of your assets, I start, raising an eyebrow a little bit.
Too good to be true.
It's too good to be true, right? It's too good to be true. So, you can get some amazing tax benefits, and there's lots of different tax regimes, that we've got to talk about and think about. But, estate taxes traditionally have been something that people have had to think about and worry about a lot, right? Right now, it's the estate tax is not something that everyone has to worry about because, unless you're gonna die, if you're married, unless you're gonna die with more than $23.4 million, there's no estate tax on you, right? But that high exemption level is very likely to go away. And in the relatively recent past, the exemption's been as low as $1 million, right? So right now we have what's called portability. So that means that each spouse has the $11.7 million exemption. But if one spouse dies and doesn't have $11.7 million, the other spouse can port the exemption there. So the gift between the married couple ultimately can be that amount. But if you haven't done the gifting now, and gifting means, again, this goes back to the question of control and beneficial ownership, right? If you want to gift an asset, that means you have to relinquish control of it. You have to give it to somebody else wholly, right? Well, you can give that amount of money right now and it will never be taxed in your estate. However, you do have to give up control of those assets to avoid it, right? So and the same thing that we can talk about for things like life insurance and even private placement life insurance, right? You can get some pretty great tax benefits for the growth of your assets in a situation like that. But to some extent, you're gonna have to give up control. Can you borrow against it? Yeah, probably. If you have private placement, you can, but there's still gonna be a consequence to it, right? You're still gonna have to come back and you've got to pay back that loan, right? The same is true with your IRAs and your 401ks. I've had many clients who run very successful businesses that hit a major hiccup, and they've got the liquidity in a retirement account, but they can't get enough out to save their business. I have one client right now who's like, I will not put money into a retirement account because when I needed that money, and it would have been enough to save my business, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it out in the way that I needed it. Right. Well, you've got great tax benefits for the growth of those assets, and you've got asset protection for them, but you can't control it the way that you want to always.
Right. And self-direction, I mean, both Wayne and I believe you have a self-directed that counts as well. When you self-direct it adds another layer of, so there's different varying degrees of control. When you add self-direction, you have a little more control and say over what you can and cannot do. And within there, there's things you can do to tap some of those resources. But yes, I mean, like you said, there's a trade-off there.
There's also a potential risk there, right? Because if you had, what we talk of, casually or colloquially as checkbook control of your retirement account, and you needed that money for a purpose that's not allowed by the IRS, right? And you took it out anyways, well, your whole account could now become taxable, including penalties, right? So you have to be self-disciplined in order to
100%.
operate in that world. We were talking before we started the recording that I've turned down a lot of clients that want to have, they want to create a checkbook LLC for their IRA or for their 401k. It's hard for me to impress upon people that, yeah, this is going to make your life easier in terms of what you want to invest in, but you're also taking a pretty big risk, right?
Risk.
I mean, there's
hold on, wait, let me rephrase what I said. I said self-control. That's not what I meant. What I meant to say was self-direct. I don't self-control anything. Self-direct means I can invest in whatever I want, but I still do it through an intermediary, and they're responsible for all the compliance with that.
Exactly right. So like if you went to Edwin Kelly and said, "Hey, I want to buy a Picasso with my IRA," he's going to waive you off of that. No, you can't buy art or collectibles with your IRA. But if you had full checkbook control, you might go, "Wow, this looks like a great investment," right? Well, if you get audited, you're going to be in trouble, right?
Hey, I'm going to go buy this NFT, right? I'm going to go buy this artwork NFT. Who it's still unclear what that is. Well, it goes up 100x. You might have an issue. And I think we all said that also depends on the risk tolerance of the person and also the field they work in. Like if you're an ER doc, or if you're someone who's doing a lot of fix and flip and you hire all the workers in-house, there's more risk there. Like, how do you differentiate within the actual risk tolerance that's probably on the person, then B, what are they actually doing in their business? What are the actual risk? If someone's working in, creating a vaccine and that's what they do, like there's more risk there. How do you kind of like, what's your framework for that?
Well, let's just take the example of a physician. Okay. And now the question becomes, well, is this physician employed by a practice group, or is this physician a partner in a practice group, or do they own a practice group and have a bunch of employees? Right.
Way different.
It's going to be a different answer for all of these people. If you're operating a business, right? One thing that I always am thinking about for clients is, could a creditor do what's called pierce the corporate veil? Okay. So let's say I have a client who's a dentist. All right. And somebody
reminds me of Stu. He's a dentist.
He's a dentist.
Stu, you're a dentist. Hey, don't try and get fancy. It's not fancy if it's true. He's a dentist. Don't get too excited.
So how can a dentist hurt somebody? I don't know. They drill the wrong tooth, or they too much laughing. I don't even really know what would go wrong in that scenario for hypothetical here. So somebody gets injured, right? Well, if the business is undercapitalized, that is one element that a court would look at to say, should we go after the shareholder of the business, right? So say you have this nice lady who's a dentist, but she just operates through her business, but her business doesn't have any assets, right? And she doesn't maintain a corporate record book, and she doesn't have all the formalities done, right? Maybe she's been late on paying her annual report fees. Who knows? No operating agreement. And so now her business has been sued, and she's got a lot of money in her personal bank account, or a lot of investments or real estate. Now a plaintiff's attorney will say, well, maybe we should make this argument to pierce the corporate veil because she's undercapitalized. So you want your operating business to be capitalized. Insurance is a form of capitalization, right? You're insuring against specified risks. So that helps you. Right? The other thing that insurance does is it buys you a legal defense, right? As long as it's for a covered claim. I cannot tell you how many clients I have who have the legal bills the amount of money that the insurance company has paid to a defense attorney to defend the claims has exceeded what the liability limits are. I mean, I have one client where it's like by a factor of probably getting close to 10.
What are those legal limits generally on a standard deal like that? What are they? $1 million,
It
500,000?
it depends on the policy, right? And you just need to understand what it is. Sometimes legal defense fees will go against your policy limits. Sometimes there's a separate limit apart from it. You got to pay an additional premium for that. Sometimes it's unlimited. We're going to defend you at all costs if we can't settle it for whatever the policy limits are, right? So you need to understand it. Nobody likes to read an insurance policy.
Insert insurance team member. We have an insurance team member who I'll see if I can get him on, but his name is Glenn. Again, no fee. He charges a flat fee. So no, he's not incentivized by the policy. And he's the guy that judges use when they want to go up against the insurance companies. He's the one who actually like audits the policy. This is the guy you want who's been doing it for 80, 90 years. Who he's like the insurance agent's worst nightmare, but that's the guy you need on your team who's actually going to read all that crap because I'm not going to read it. You know, he'll look at it for you, but that's not what he does. This is the guy, this is all he does. He knows the companies, he knows the policies, he's going to get you the best deal. And insurance, it's kind of like, how's that phrase? There's cost. Like you're trying to offset their cost. So it's not like you're going to win and they're going to lose. They have certain costs they want to cover. It's just, you're just buying insurance. It's not like a profit for profit thing. So just make sure you have a flat fee insurance advisor review all this crap. You'd be surprised, Wayne, how many guys I see get raped, for lack of a better term. I mean, the rips on these insurance policies are 30-40%. And if you don't have anyone looking at how they're structuring the policy or whatever, like you're just going to get taken to school. As much as I love the insurance agent and they might be nice, good people, but you got to watch the incentive structure. How are they getting paid?
Yeah. And the other thing that you have to realize is that they're maybe not digging in and drilling into every little piece of the policy themselves either, right? I'll tell you a situation that actually scared me was one time a long time ago, I had a business vehicle and I called my insurance company and I said, yeah, but I'm a lawyer. So, and this is 100% for business use. And the insurance agent said, oh yeah, that's fine. Just keep it on your personal policy. We'll schedule this vehicle on the policy, right? And it didn't sit right with me. Mm-hmm. Right. It just didn't sit right with me. So I printed out my policy and sat down and read it and went back to my agent and said, you're 100% wrong. I mean, there's a specific exclusion to coverage here that if I get into a wreck, not only is the vehicle not covered, right, for the loss, but I'm potentially not covered for liability either. Right. And so now my business is open to liability and I'm personally open to liability. Right. I get on the phone with the commercial division. And guess what? It's a little bit more expensive, but it's worth the sleep I had 100%. That night to go, 100%. Okay, and I'm doing it the right way. Right. Yep. I'm now doing it the right way.
And it takes a little bit more time initially, guys, to do that, whatever that is, but it's worth it in the long run because you're building, again, what Bryce and I spoke about, you're building that base. And this is kind of where we're going to build our wealth on. So if that base is shaky, it doesn't take a whole lot. And one of these little silly things that Wayne is talking about that aren't silly when they hit you in the face, none of what Wayne's going to talk about in terms of trust and Wyoming LLCs and different LLCs and different things you can do help you with this. I mean, they'll protect you, but they're not like this is just basic dribbling, right? Basic dribbling that you want to make sure is covered.
You want the baselines covered for sure.
So let's talk about some of the things you do in terms of, before we get into offshore and onshore, actually let's talk about onshore trust first and then LLCs too. What are your thoughts there? I know that you use different, obviously S corps, you also use LLCs as a partnerships, and then you use them in different states. How do you set up that? And then maybe we can talk about domestic versus offshore and when someone should, or at what asset level should someone go there. And generally the clients you work with, do they range in certain kind of income or net wealth? So like to give people an idea of like who your typical or ideal client is. I know you've got clients that are billionaires plus, and you got clients that are a lot less than that.
I have clients who have net worths as low as $200,000, okay, right? That are thinking about this, they just don't want to go below that level, right? I mean, that to them is catastrophic, or this is we just can't dip below here, or we're going to make a lot more. We got to this level of 200 fast, or there's already a problem on the horizon, right? And let's minimize what the exposure is, even though there's already a problem, which in some respects it's too late, but there are some things that you can do, right? And if you're willing to accept what the consequences are of certain actions, then there's more that you can do. It's not advisable though. You want to be very proactive. And what we're talking about, and I'm being super
100%.
abstract here, but what we're talking about is an area of law called fraudulent transfers, right? And now they're called voidable transactions or voidable transfers. They're also fraudulent conversions, right? So a conversion would be like transferring an asset from something that's not protected. So like your checking account, say you got $100,000 in your checking account, and then you go buy a life insurance policy with it, right? You've converted it from one asset type to another. You haven't transferred it. You haven't gotten rid of it. You still can be the owner of the life insurance policy, but you've converted it into an exempt asset under Florida law. That can be unwound. A judge can simply void it and say, no, those assets are coming back into the fold.
He's not very happy with what you did. I mean, that's like, hey, you're like, you didn't set this up initially. So now you got into hot water, and now you're trying to like dance, and that dance is not going to be looked upon favorably. And you might even get some jail time for some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I hope you like the taste of prison food. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to make him do that quote from other guys. Everyone watch the movie.
Yeah, watch the movie.
Please, don't move! Drop your weapons! Drop it! Or be dropped, homeboy! I hope you like prison food.
That's classic. And I picked it up as soon as you dropped it. So you've got different ranges. And then I guess talk about, let's set up the basics of LLCs, Florida LLC, Wyoming LLC. Yeah. When should guys change up LLC, and then also LLC types, whether it's S Corp or whatever?
Sure. So I do want to go back really fast, and because I just said the words fraudulent transfer, avoidable transaction. I want to define that really fast, and then I'll jump into the LLC question. But that is a transfer, any transfer that is made to hinder, delay, or defeat a legitimate creditor. Okay. Now, if you already have a relationship with someone and there's a potential liability with that person because you've entered a contract, or there's any other basis for a claim, that is considered a potential creditor. So you cannot make any transfer of an asset to hinder, delay, or defeat that type of known potential contingent, even if it's a contingent creditor. Okay. So that's why you want to be as proactive as you possibly can in terms of plan now for something that could potentially come up in the future from an unknown party, someone that maybe you've never even met before. And the classic example is having kids that drive vehicles, right? There's like not a week of my life that goes by that I don't get that phone call that, you know, my 17-year-old got into a car accident and we're being sued, right? I mean, that's a terrible situation to be unprepared for, you know? And
not just that. I mean, think about it from the attorneys. Like, you call up Wayne, and there's been guys that call up Wayne when they have the gun pointed to their head. Hey, Wayne, can you help me out? Well, A, you're stressing me out. B, if I help you, price isn't going to be pretty. And C, Wayne may not want to do it because now it adds stress to his life, because now your stress becomes his stress, even though as zen and as great as Wayne is, like you just got to be very mindful of that. He much rather protect someone like me. Like, look, we got all this set up. Wayne, this happened. Oh, this is easy, right? Because we already set up for it.
A lot of people call me and they're sleep deprived because they've been just going over a situation in their head over and over and over again, and they're exhausted by it. And a lot of times I feel like I'm as much of a therapist in my initial calls to say, look, let's reset. Here's the good things about the situation. Here's the positives that we can take away. I do think there is X, Y, Z that we can do for you. Go collect yourself, and let's come back to it and attack it in a methodical way. Develop a strategy if there is one, you know, that works. And let's just be, you know, really deliberate about the process.
I like that,
because it's part of what an attorney brings to the table is emotional detachment, right? And being able to say, okay, look, logically, here's some things that you can potentially do, but you've got to kind of calm down. It's hard though. It's hard. I mean, if you've ever been served with a lawsuit, it's not a good feeling, right? And it can really wreak havoc with you.
And this is probably where the meditation helps a lot, right?
Sure. I mean, I sort of come from this place. You mentioned Einstein before, right? Which is, I think what he had said was something like the most important decision you ever make in your life is if you think the universe is a kind place or an unkind place.
Correct. Yeah.
So, something like to that. Yep. Something to that effect, right? And look, all the stuff that we're talking about, Ray, in the cosmic sense of existence, you think about how big just our solar system is, right? I mean, how much effort it's taking for us to try to land a human being on Mars, right? I mean, we're small, and the length of our lives is, the length of our lives is relatively minute in the grand scheme of sort of the existence. So another thing that it brings me back to, and that I try to share with clients, is the Stoic thinkers, Seneca, who was a very wealthy, business person, but he sort of had this mindset of, I could make it with nothing, right? And having that mindset is having wealth. You know that you don't have to drive a certain car, and you don't have to have, you can still have happiness, and you can still, get up and fight every day, right?
I mean, one of the things Wayne and I talk about most isn't asset protection. We actually talk about this exact subject, where, because Wayne has more diversity in people who he sees, but I'm sure he's got a lot of clients, and a lot of clients that he other people that he knows, that these guys are billionaires or whatever. And you think that the money would make you happy, but ultimately these are some of the most miserable people in their life. So there's a difference between having money and being wealthy. And it sounds like it's just semantics, but it really isn't. Being wealthy is more like who you are. It's your being, your gratitude, your friendships. That's the intangible sides of wealth. That to me is, and appreciating those and being in a state of gratitude and appreciation for those, that to me is true wealth. And if you can add some financial wealth on top of that, that's great. But they're two very different things. I know, and again, I'm teaching this most, but I need to learn. At times the bank account looks great, and you can still be in a place where you've got a lot of money and you still feel lack and poverty. Do you find that true? Or is that just me?
It's absolutely true. I'll give you a personal example from my background. One thing to living a wealthy life or living a rich life for me is I have a tendency to want to be really frugal. I have a tendency to want to haggle, right? And to feel like, oh yeah, I got a good deal, or I negotiated a good deal for myself. But you know how good it feels to just go, yeah, I want that, and just go pay for it and go on to the next thing, dude. Just go on to the next thing. Just done with it, right? Like I want to go on this trip. Just go on the computer right now and buy the plane ticket.
Okay. Yep.
Just go do it. If it is not going to, drastically change your quality of life, just the experience of committing to it and saying, we're just gonna go do it, right? That's part of it, right? Being able to do things that you really want to do, and actually enjoying the process of doing it, and not going, I'm gonna fight over every single cent.
It's the way you're being as you're doing these things, not the things you're doing. So when you go out to eat, dude, tip the waitress as well. If someone gives me a haircut, like some of them, they look at me like, keep it. Yeah, keep it. And dude, you light up their face. You can't buy that. And what, the extra $20, $30 that I gave them as a tip is gonna change my life? Yeah,
exactly.
It changed theirs.
Exactly. Or not only did it change their life, but also the lives from the perspective of, yeah, that's money in their pocket that helps them, but also, wow, there's kindness out there, right? And also anybody else who sees that has the neurotransmitters in their brain go off, and there's sort of a pay it forward, or a sense of gratitude that comes out of it. Listen, all this stuff that we're talking about, Ray, is a luxury, right? There's a huge percentage of the world that worries about where they're going to get clean drinking water from, or that doesn't have a sanitary bathroom to use. A lot of real problems in the world, and we've got a lot of really high quality problems.
Yep.
Right.
And the weird thing is, as you give more on the charity piece or whatever, even these every day you find a way to give more, the universe then finds a way to bless you more, because it's you become then a channel of which blessings can come through you, and just more comes in.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. Well, we can jump off onto the LLC question now. That was good. But I do have that. You tipped somebody $30 for that haircut, buddy. I would have just come over next time. I'll bust out the clippers. Well, I'd probably have to give a big tip for this mop I've got going on right now.
Well, she came to the house, you know what I mean? But she was like, what?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You know a guy named Joe Dispenza?
I know the name.
He had a meditation retreat, Dr. Joe, and I went to the event, and the people at the hotel were so kind and grateful, and I met like a general manager who kind of took care of us as we were eating there, and he wasn't there that day, so I was going to give him a tip, and I just didn't see him. So someone else that day, she just happened to say hi to me and speak to me in Spanish or whatever, and she was like, the lady serving the food. And I said, well, then he missed his blessing. He didn't show up that day. He missed his blessing. So I gave her a blessing. Like it was like the whole world just stopped. And I handed her $100, like just for her. Dude, like the whole world stopped for her. She's like, I had been praying to God. I've been praying for a miracle. The $100 allowed her to take her kid to daycare that week. Like some people are like living in that space where they just like in the summer, they can't send their kids to daycare. Like that's some people, that's some people's reality.
I've been there, right? Where it's like a feeling of sort of desperation, you know, but also even finding it in yourself in that space, you know? So I mean, two specific examples. One time, this is, oh man, a very, very long time ago. I was stuck in a traffic jam on a 4-lane road, and there was a car that was trying to make a left turn behind me, but I was sort of blocking the intersection. So I'm creeping forward, and so they can come, and I just like bumped the car in front of me, right? I mean, I'm just going a half a mile an hour, right? And I rolled down my window and said, hey, why don't we, you know, I want to pull over to this parking lot right here, see if there's any damage or whatever. I got out of the car, and the lady is freaking out, right? It became sort of apparent to me what was happening. She didn't speak English very well. I was looking at the car. She probably didn't have insurance, right? There's 2 young kids in the back of the car, and she's saying to me, please don't call the police. Please don't call the police. And I said, okay, I know nobody's hurt. I was, like I said, I was going a half a mile an hour. I just want to make sure I didn't crack the bumper on her car or something like that. No damage all the way around. I said, okay, well, how about we settle the claim? I give you $100. And she was like, but like, I mean, it was like, she just couldn't have, it was like, you know, this guy bumping into her made her day. Right. Yep. But you just take those opportunities, you know, where you can get them.
Yep.
I think, and I think you're right that you know, that there is such a thing as karma.
Yep.
My experience.